more than 1,000 points after the president indicated that more tariffs could be coming. CNN's Allison Cossack has more for us.
Hey there. On Wall Street, it was a volatile week of trading. Even with a shortened trading week, the major indices lost more than 4%. Thursday saw the Dow plunging almost 800 points, only to rebound the next day. The S&P 500 is now on track for its worst quarter since 2011, and all the major indices have wiped out all of their gains for 2018. Now, the wild week comes as anxiety continues about the unresolved trade situation between China and the U.S. It's anxiety that was amplified when Canada arrested the chief financial officer of Huawei at the request of the United States. That's after President Trump and China's President Xi agreed last weekend in Argentina to a 90-day ceasefire in the ongoing U.S.-China trade war. But conflicting messages about trade coming out of the White House, that's causing even more uncertainty in the market. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow on Friday sounding an optimistic note on CNBC about talks with China, while trade advisor Peter Navarro, he warned of higher tariffs if issues aren't resolved in the 90 days. The confusion is helping to juice the volatility that we're seeing in the markets. Friday's jobs report showed hiring slowed in November. Employers added 155,000 jobs last month, which fell short of expectations. But analysts say it's still a solid gain. The unemployment rate held steady at 3.7%, and that's the lowest level in 49 years. The strongest job growth happened in banking and healthcare, while the manufacturing sector added 27,000 jobs. So tariffs and larger fears of a trade war apparently not showing up in the jobs report just yet. But the weaker job number could give the Federal Reserve room to slow down the pace of its interest rate hikes next year, even though it's widely expected to raise rates again this month. Now, if the Fed does change course, that could calm investors who had been worried the Fed will move too fast on interest rates. Back to you.
Thank you, Allison. With me now is Michelle Singletary. She's the personal finance columnist for The Color of Money, which appears in the Washington Post. Michelle, good morning to you.
Good morning.
All right, so your latest piece says that the president's tweeting, and he's been tweeting a lot about this trade talk with China, scares individual investors. How so?
Well, you know, already we don't have enough people saving for retirement. And so all of this news and this ups and downs in the market scares them. I mean, we're talking about regular people who don't want to lose their money. And he's tweeting about these things and making the market go crazy. And it's causing people not to want to invest. And we know that they need to invest so they have a secure retirement.
So, you know, we're talking about ordinary people. We're not talking about hedge fund managers or people who are watching the pensions, but the people who are deciding what they do with their little extra money at the end of every pay period. Have you seen an increase in the volatility that's based on the tweets? I mean, is there any research that shows that we're seeing, because of the president's way of responding, that's making the markets move and scaring people specifically?
I haven't seen research in the last 2 weeks, but, you know, I'm out there, I'm talking to people. I have a column for the Post that's syndicated, so I get emails from readers all the time, and they are scared. And they don't like the fact that the president is tweeting and making the markets go crazy. We know that the markets are unpredictable already, but we're talking about people who are inexperienced investors, and they sometimes don't understand that the markets go like this. But, you know, right now, in this moment, they know that the market is down, and if I put $100 in it, I'm going to lose money. And they don't have the perspective of some of the more experienced investors who know that you have to wait this out. I just wish he would stop tweeting. and because this is a dire situation. We know people are not saving enough for retirement. Yeah. And he's the president of the United States, and what he does matters. And when you're talking about regular people who need to be investing, that he's got to take that into account when he fires off these tweets early in the morning. Get some sleep. Go to sleep. Stop tweeting.
So where are they putting their money, Michelle? If they're afraid and they're seeing these huge dips, where do they go with it?
You know, savings accounts, CDs, bonds, which over time is not going to help them keep pace with inflation. See, that's the other thing. You know, you've got to invest as soon as you can and as often as you can. And you've got to be a little bit aggressive, even as you're in retirement and in retirement. We now know that people are living 20 and 30 years in retirement, so you can't have all your money in a savings account. It's not going to grow at the pace that you need it to. And you definitely can't have it in your mattress. But people are scared. scared. And that's the message of the column and what I've been trying to tell people, but I can't get that message across when they see the markets go crazy because of a tweet.
So you tell the people who read the column to, be careful, but also understand that there is an ebb and flow, and your message to the president is go to sleep.
Go to sleep. Stop tweeting, especially when it relates to things that can impact the market. Certainly, as president, he has to do some things to help, our economy. But the things that he's doing right now is doing damage to people who need to be investing because it's scaring them.
All right, Michelle Singletary, always good to have you.
Oh, glad to be here.
Thank you. Jessica?
In on what may be a worst-case scenario for the White House, President Trump directly implicated in 2 federal crimes connected to the Russia investigation.
Now, for the first time, a team of investigators say that then-candidate Trump explicitly directed his personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, to break federal election law. The memo is 7 pages long, but here's the key phrase from that filing. And it's important that we let these words resonate, so I'm going to read them for you. Cohen's commission of 2 finance crimes on the eve of the 2016 election for the President of the United States struck a blow to one of the core goals of the federal campaign finance laws, transparency. While many Americans who desired a particular outcome to the election knocked on doors, toiled at phone banks, or found any number of other legal ways to make their voices heard, Cohen sought to influence the election from the shadows. He did so by orchestrating a secret and illegal payment to silence 2 women who otherwise would have made public their alleged extramarital affairs with individual one, the President of the United States. In the process, Cohen deceived the voting public by hiding alleged facts that he believed would have had a substantial effect on the election.
In a second filing, a special prosecutor Robert Mueller's team says former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort lied about 5 major issues after agreeing to cooperate with prosecutors. And shockingly, they say Manafort was in contact with the Trump administration as recently as this year. Manafort was indicted in 2017. And we begin with the latest details on the case against Michael Cohen.
CNN's MJ Lee explains what these memos could mean for Cohen when he is sentenced next week.
A very dramatic day for Michael Cohen, President Donald Trump's former lawyer, as he waits his sentencing next week. 2 separate filings, one from special counsel Robert Mueller and another filing from the Southern District of New York, laying out some of the details of Michael Cohen's wrongdoings. The filing from special counsel Robert Mueller laying out how Michael Cohen has extensively cooperated with the special counsel's office, including in 7 interviews, and how he provided details about his own contacts with Russians. Here's a key passage from that Mueller filing. It says the defendant has taken significant steps to mitigate his criminal conduct. He chose to accept responsibility for his false statements and admit to his conduct in open court. He also has gone to significant lengths to assist the special counsel's investigation. It also says that the cooperation that Michael Cohen has shown should be taken into consideration when that joint sentencing happens next week. Now, the filing from SDNY, the Southern District of New York, that actually was very bad news for Michael Cohen when taken on its own. It said that Michael Cohen should get a substantial term of imprisonment and only a modest leniency when it comes to his prison sentence. Again, that is expected next week. This filing from SDNY laid out how Michael Cohen evaded taxes, how he lied to banks, and also how he illegally tried to affect the outcome of the 2016 presidential campaign. That, of course, is referring to the hush payments that were made to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels, 2 women who said that they had affairs with Donald Trump. A key passage from that SDNY filing says that after cheating the IRS for years, lying to banks and to Congress, and seeking to criminally influence the presidential election, Cohen's decision to plead guilty rather than seek a pardon for his many-fold crimes does not make him a hero. So this is going to be a blow for Michael Cohen and his lawyers, who are arguing that Michael Cohen should get actually no jail time because of the extent of his cooperation with investigators, and also because he is committed to helping the government get to the truth. The SDNY clearly does not agree with that assessment. MJ Lee, CNN, New York.
MJ, thank you. And for his part, President Trump appears to be brushing off the implications of the Mueller team's memos.
Let's bring in now CNN White House correspondent Boris Sanchez. Boris, the president has tweeted now several times about this, the latest implications for his administration. What's he saying this morning?
Hey there, Victor and Jessica. Yeah, the president actually just tweeted a few moments ago. I want to bring that tweet up now. He writes, quote, "After 2 years and millions of pages of documents and a cost of over $30 million, no collusion. We should clarify what was filed yesterday was a sentencing document against Paul Manafort, the president's former campaign chairman, and Michael Cohen, his personal attorney. Those in no way are the final report that we're expecting Robert Mueller to put out. There is some speculation as to when that may happen. But again, that is not the final verdict of whether the president or anyone on his campaign colluded with Russians back in the 2016 election. I did want to point out that Sarah Sanders, the press secretary, released a statement yesterday pertaining to those filings. In Manafort's case, she effectively says that that filing doesn't implicate the president at all. She suggests that that is more related to Manafort's financial crimes. When it comes to Cohen, she says that there's no new information there, despite the revelation or the continuing confirmation, I should say, that it appears the president may have committed a campaign finance violation. She goes on to suggest that Michael Cohen is no hero, echoing a line in one of the sentencing documents. Previously, the president had tweeted that this totally clears him. In fact, it does not. It leads to further questions and further pressing of the president. There's that tweet there. And this administration to find out exactly what he knew and when he knew it. Ultimately, a lot of questions for this administration to answer. We'll see if the president continues tweeting later today. Jessica and Victor.
All right. Boris Sanchez from the White House this morning. Thanks so much.
So much to discuss on both the legal and political consequences. Joining me now, Amy Parnes, senior political correspondent for The Hill, and Michael Zeldin, CNN legal analyst and former special assistant to Robert Mueller at the Justice Department. Welcome back to both of you. And Michael, I want to start with you, and I want to start with the banner, the headline here, that these filings now suggest, or they say, that the president directed his personal attorney to commit federal crimes to protect his campaign.
That's right. That's what the headline is. Now, we have to be careful about two things here. One is, this is the statements of Cohen and now sort of accepted by the prosecutor's office in connection with Cohen's guilty plea. It's quite a different matter, I think, sometimes as a prosecutor to be able to prove that in a court of law. I would expect that the president would defend an allegation that these monies were paid to influence the outcome of the election, which is required to willfully violate this statute and make it a felony, by saying that if he did this, he did it to protect his family and his wife. And so you've got this dual motive for doing so. So in terms of prosecuting a case against the president, it's not quite so simple. But as a banner headline, that the Southern District of New York has accepted as true that the president directed Cohen to violate the law, that's significant stuff.
And they would have to have more than just his word, right, considering that he's lied consistently for some time now.
Exactly. And I think they have that in the form of Pecker, the head of American International Media,
David
Pecker, the head of the organization that bought these stories from the CFO of the Trump organization. So I expect they have corroborative evidence through other witnesses, and they probably have documentary evidence too. But it's again this question of what was the president's intention in making these payments, which would be complicated for a prosecutor. But that's not necessarily what we need to do right now. We need to say only that the president has been said to have violated the law by his own Justice Department in the Southern District of New York.
All right, so to you, Amy, just fact-checking the response here from Sarah Sanders when she says that the government's filings in Mr. Cohen's case tell us nothing of value that wasn't already known.
I think that that's not right, obviously. I think it kind of leads us a little closer to finding out the truth and where individual one or President Trump was in this case. And I think, it's very clear that in any other case, if any other person was involved in instructing someone or directing someone to pay off to women on the eve of the election, this would be a bad thing for anyone in elected office. So I don't don't think that this is good news for him. It shows that the walls are closing in on not only, there is this Cohen matter, but there is everything else. And this was just a sampling, Victor, of what Mueller knows. I think more obviously is going to come out in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, let me talk to you about the political element here. Rahm Emanuel is on with David Axelrod on the Axe Files later tonight. And of course, he was, in addition to being President Obama's chief of staff and mayor of Chicago now, he was also the chair of the Democratic caucus in the House. And he has some advice for House Democrats who are going to take control in January. Watch this.
Don't focus immediately on Trump. Focus immediately. You have something with the Secretary of Labor, you have with EPA, you have in Interior Department, you have it at the Commerce Department, you have it at HUD. He has brought the swamp to Washington and flooded the plains. And I think Mueller will deal with Trump.
And he's begun to turn over his cards.
That's right. You don't have to go and lead Mueller. You need Mueller to lead. You have an entire government that is not on its game protecting the American people. The House should focus there.
Now, that was recorded before the release of these documents or the filing of the documents. What do you know? How does that correspond with the direction that House Democrats are intending to go?
I think that's very much kind of on par with what House Democrats are thinking. You're not hearing very many calls for impeachment in recent months. They've kind of laid low on that. You hear kind of rumblings of it behind the scenes, but I think Rahm is right that they do want to sort of take a more to let Mueller kind of do his thing, to focus on the other elements around President Trump, and I think that's the approach that they're going to take. But I think Republicans are going to be increasingly under pressure to say, do you agree with this, particularly right now in this moment? It'll be interesting to see which Republicans can kind of come out and say, yeah, this is a step too far and we need to take action.
Michael, an interesting legal perspective here. We've said for some time now that it's not illegal to lie to reporters or to the public on certain issues. The Moscow Project, the payment to the women. But you see in this filing that Mueller believes that it is evidence of obstruction of justice to lie to the public.
It seems that is clear between the lines of what Mueller is saying here. Mueller has said with respect to Cohen and with respect to Manafort that they're lying to the public, and particularly Cohen. They're lying to the public, sort of distracted the investigators from their core mission. And that distraction interfered with their investigation, and that interference could give rise to obstruction. And so Ken Starr said the same thing about Bill Clinton's lying during the Whitewater investigation. He said it was obstruction of his investigation. So it's not clear to me that Mueller will not take the same view with respect to the president, that all of these lies that are trying to divert the attention of the American people and to make the job more difficult for investigators isn't part of the mosaic of what he will look at as obstruction. And I think, Victor, one other thing to add to this is that in the Cohen documents, it says that Cohen was in touch with the White House during 2017 and 18, and that Cohen discussed with others his false testimony before Congress. That has to be fleshed out. If Cohen was talking to the White House about submitting false testimony, that's a very serious felony.
All right, Michael Zeldin, Amy Parnes, thank you both.
Thank you.
Special counsel Robert Mueller says Paul Manafort lied to his investigators. And even though Manafort was once Trump's campaign chairman, the White House says this latest filing has nothing to do with the president. Next, we're going to take a closer look at that claim.
Plus,
court filing, special counsel Robert Mueller says former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort lied again and again about several key points.
And this was after he agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. Joining us now with more on what that means for the wider Russia investigation, CNN politics reporter Jeremy Herb joins us live from Washington. Jeremy?
Yeah, that's right. The court filing we got yesterday from Mueller accusing former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort of lying details the wealth of evidence that is growing that we've seen that Mueller has connecting Trump's team and their contacts with the Russians during the 2016 campaign. The document accuses Manafort of lying about 5 different issues after he agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in his plea agreement earlier this year. The document provides kind of clues about some of Manafort's interactions with the Russians, as well as some questions that we just don't know the answer to yet. One of the items Mueller says Manafort lied about was contact with Trump administration officials over the past year, including a senior administration official. Mueller says he has text messages documenting some of these communications. Now, what we don't know is who Manafort was talking to and why, and more importantly, why he allegedly lied about it to the special counsel. Another of the lies that Mueller documented says that Manafort lied about his contacts with Konstantin Kilimnik, who is a Russian national that prosecutors say has ties to Russian military intelligence. Now, much of the section involving Kilimnik in the filing yesterday is redacted, but there have been questions swirling about collusion involving Kilimnik, given his closeness to Manafort and Russian military intelligence that was active during and allegedly meddling during the campaign. Now, Manafort has denied that he actively lied to the special counsel, but what this means for him is that he could face additional charges before he's sentenced for crimes he already was convicted of earlier this year. Victor and Jessica.
All right, Jeremy Herb for us. Thank you so much.
And there's a lot to discuss on both the legal front and the political front in all of this. Amy Parnes and Michael Zeldin are back with us. Amy, I want to start with you. We have seen this White House and the president really try to separate itself from all of this. We've heard the president say, oh, I don't really know Paul Manafort that well. They've really tried to put some distance between themselves and all of this. And now we have word that Manafort was in contact with the White House as recently as this year following his indictment. What does this mean for the White House?
I mean, it's not good, Jessica. And you know, you'll recall a couple of months ago, or maybe a year ago, when the financial dealings came back, they tried to say, oh, this has nothing to do with Russia. This is all him and his personal dealings. This now brings it a step closer, and even closer to the White House. And you know, the fact that that Mueller has text messages and other communications that show that he was in touch with a senior administration official and Trump officials. This actually, you know, will let it speak for itself. They're still in touch, and they're still communicating about what is happening, and that does not bode well for the White House, clearly.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, we saw that list when Jeremy was talking of all the lies that Manafort is accused of. He's lied about the contact with the White House. He's lied about his contact with Russians. Why is he lying, and what's the end game here?
Well, the end game is that he's going to go to prison. So, you know, that's the end game for Manafort. Why he's lying, you know, it seems that he has a disposition to lie that may be genetic. It's not, you know, legally from a defend yourself and try to get the best deal standpoint, none of this makes sense. But what I think is important from Jeremy's reporting and from these documents is that both Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen were in touch with the White House in 2017 and 2018. What the nature of that contact was and what it was that they were trying to do with the White House, that is, was the White House trying to shape their testimony, both with respect to Cohen as he testified before the Hill and Manafort as he cooperated, in quotes, with Mueller. And if there is evidence, and it's a big word if there is evidence that the White House was endeavoring to construct a false narrative to be presented to Congress on Cohen's part, or Manafort in respect of Mueller, then that is the most, you know, sort of legally problematic thing that the White House will face. I think far more so than the collusion allegations, because this would be suborning perjury and witness tampering, which is a very straightforward proposition for a prosecutor to bring if the evidence supports it.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, we also learned that Manafort has been in front of a grand jury twice this fall. What do you think that says? What do you read into that?
Well, we know from the filings in this case, Cohen and Manafort, and in Flynn, that there's an ongoing criminal investigation that the Justice Department, we don't know where in the Justice Department, is undertaking. And so the fact that Manafort is testifying before a grand jury, to me, indicates that there is a live case that's ongoing, that's receiving evidence that is likely to result in an indictment. We don't know for what substance and for what target, but this is a very live criminal investigation that a lot of people are participating in with the Justice Department.
Right. And Amy, quickly before we go, what about congressional Republicans? We have all this new information. Where is the red line for them, do you think? Do you expect to hear from anybody that we haven't heard from who finally says, okay, this is concerning to me, or do you think they kind of continue forward in the way they've been moving?
That's the interesting question, I think, Jessica, is how Republicans will handle this news. You know, these are more drips in the bucket, and but you know, they bring us closer to where everything Democrats say, you know, that there was collusion and there was all of that. So it'll be interesting to see if Republicans kind of come out and say this was a step too far, that we now have evidence that there was maybe not collusion, but there was contact made, and so it'll be interesting to see if anyone comes out now to admit as much.
Yeah, much more to come on all of this. Amy Parnes and Michael Zeldin, thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.